Hi everyone, and welcome to this edition of Brave Briefings, where men and women can share their stories or their tips on how we can live a safe and peaceful life devoid of harassment and sexual and gender-based violence. Are you brave? Hi, I am Lois, your friend for forgiveness from Walking Without Skin. And today I have another brave woman on the show, and I'd love to welcome Heather Cresswell. Hi, Heather.
Hello, thanks so much for having me here with you today. It's such a
Yeah,
pleasure to be.
thank you so much for coming to share your tip on how we can be brave. So,
Mm.
before we get on to brave, do you want to share a bit about who you are?
Mm. Thanks. Yes, so I am a leadership coach, assisting entrepreneurs and leaders to realize their personal and professional dreams. And I bring the personal in because without our own personal development, without us being brave enough to go on an internal journey to discover who we are, I don't think that we can honestly step into our full potential as leaders. We first need to learn how to lead ourselves. And out of that, we are then able to lead others and our teams and our families.
That's fantastic. If we don't know ourselves, how can we absolutely work with other people? So that is fantastic. So to know yourself, need to know your values.
Mm. And I'm gonna go a little bit off tangent here because I did say that I was going to speak about values and vulnerability. But what I wanted to talk about and share a little bit about today is something that I think does tie in with it, but it ties in with your R. And what I've been thinking about and writing about is about retrieval. And that is the retrieval of those lost aspects of ourselves that might be still stuck in some of those traumatic events that happened to us. So it's putting a value on yourself, it's putting a value on how can you integrate and retrieve and bring back some of those aspects of yourself that maybe got left behind in some of those traumatic incidents that have happened to us.
That's fascinating. Could you give us an example?
So when I was 10 years old, my I lost my sister to she was raped and she was murdered.
Oh, no.
And this had a shattering effect on our family. She was much older than me, and it wasn't it wasn't so much the loss of her. It was, of course, that. But what happened to me in that situation is that when my dad found out, I was with him in a car and we drove for 45 minutes together. And him being, I was 10 and my sister was 24. And he was in such shock himself that he was venting all of his grief, all of his rage, all of that was just pouring out of him onto my 10-year-old self. And I literally, in that moment, I was so stunned and I was so shocked that I literally could feel myself leaving my body and losing consciousness, losing myself in that process. And of course, when something like that happens to us, it's so devastating because we develop so many points of views and unconscious patterns that come out of that. So some of mine were, that women were weak, like terrible things could happen to women. It was scary to be a woman, and then beliefs about men. That men are dangerous and they can't be trusted and they can be violent. And so my part of my retrieval was that little inner child, that little girl that was 10 years old when this happened, almost got stuck there. And I was that, and so I continued with life, but I was very cut off. I was quite numb. I, engaged in risky behavior because I didn't have respect for myself, and didn't punish men through relationships. So a whole lot of behavior and patterning came out of this event. And it was only really when I started to do that inner work of going back and getting that 10-year-old, that 10-year-old part of myself back, and almost taking my adult self and parenting her through that process and mothering her through that process and allowing her to go through the emotions as an adult that I wasn't able to access as a 10-year-old, because obviously I think we know, like, our coping mechanisms step in when we in that kind of trauma. And so it was learning that to value myself and to go back and retrieve those parts of myself so that I could integrate that more fully, and out of that forgive and see that not, that doesn't apply to all men, and I can value myself and be vulnerable in my interactions with other women, and step into my power as a woman as well.
Wow, what a story. Thank you so much for sharing, and for sharing so vulnerably as well. Thank you. What a dreadful experience, and well done for overcoming that. So, sure. So what you've done, you've actually discussed every letter of brave in that,
Mm.
because it's about respect, and it's about values and vulnerability and empowerment. You empowered yourself in the end.
Mm.
Wow. So can you give any tips or advice on how people can retrieve themselves?
So, look, I was privileged enough to go and work with somebody to go, to do it. But as I've got older, I needed some therapeutic help, actually, and a coach to work through that. But I use meditation a lot and visualization a lot. In if I sense, I'm being triggered about something, or I have a realization that I'm not able to be fully vulnerable in a situation. So what happened was an event where I left that part of myself behind. And to really go back in meditation and give whatever that child needed in that moment, give it to them from your adult self. So, me sitting in that car, I would go back as my adult self and take that child by the hand, comfort her, make sure that she was okay, speak to her, tell her that not all men are like that, that her father is going to be okay, because he did end up going through his grieving process and never fully recovered, but he was okay at the end of it. He didn't die from it. So I think going back as the adult that you are now, as that loving adult that you can be, and go and visualize, because the unconscious, where these things sit, the unconscious works in imagery and pictures. So it's not a mental process, it's actually a visualization process of being able to go back to that part of yourself and bring her in and give her whatever she needed at that point in time, and take her by the hand so that she can step into the light and out of the shadows.
Oh, that's beautiful. So thank you for taking your younger self out of that darkness. It's brilliant, because it's made you who you are today. So well done. Sure, that is quite a story. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, for being so brave to share your story. So everybody, thank you so much. And you know that you too can be brave, that we can fight the scourge together, that we can fight this silent pandemic that is taking over. And I would love you to contact Heather. You can contact her. I'll put her details below. You can contact me on Walking Without Skin. So please do join us. Be bold, be brave, and fly free. Thank you so much, Heather, for joining us.
Thank you. And thank you for all the incredible work that you do, Lois. You are so brave. You just live everything that you talk about. It's incredible.
So thanks, everybody. Go and retrieve your younger self. Thanks. Thank you, and go well.